Testing, testing, testing. All right, good evening, everybody. Time is 6:30. I'll go ahead and open up open public comment. Views expressed by individuals during public comment do not necessarily reflect the views of the city of Fremont, have not been verified for accuracy by the city. As a reminder, the city council and staff are not permitted to respond to comments or questions during the public comment period in accordance with Fremont Municipal Code Section 2-103. Public comments will be limited to 3 minutes per person and shall not include items on this evening's agenda. So if you are here and wish to speak, if you haven't already, please sign in here at the front. There's also comment cards as well in the box. And Travis has the sheet. We'll go ahead and call up the first person this evening. Okay. Yes, go ahead.
Okay, my name's Donna Peterson, and I live along the Clarmar Ditch in Fremont, lucky me. And I'm concerned because the weeds have gotten so bad there that it doesn't look good for Fremont. The neighborhood takes care of their lawns and everything, but this looks really bad. Last Friday, when there was that downpour of rain, the ditch went to the east. I live on the west side of it. Went out into the driveways of the people across the street. I know that I've been told that it's a contracted job and that it's hard to get people to do it. But I would think that if the contractors can't do it, that maybe you would have a backup plan that somebody would do it. I will mention that when my husband was alive, and I would say it was 3 to 4 years ago, 70-year-old man got down in that ditch with a weed whacker and did it himself because it looked so bad. So I just wanted to bring it to everybody's attention. I don't know if you drive by the ditches around in Fremont, but it's gotten really out of hand. And I know there's been a lot of rain. I understand that. But another thing that comes to mind is a few years ago, there was some equipment that the city had, that it was a big round blade that with articulating arm that the only thing it could do was mow down the middle of the ditch, and then there were people that would do the sides with the weed whacker, but that hasn't been done either. The last time I really noticed it having been mowed was around Memorial Day this year, and it's gotten way out of hand. There's some weeds that look to me like cattails. They don't have the cattail on there, but the long leaves. And actually, if it gets any taller, it's going to be hard to see people coming if you're heading east, to see people coming from the south. So I think that's something that we need to address and get taken care of. Even the weeds along the gutter are bad going down Claremore. So I would just hope that you would take this into consideration and see what you could do about it. I know there's an ordinance that if homeowners don't keep their weeds down, that they can get fined. And so do we fine the city? I don't know. The weeds aren't getting taken care of. So I just wish that you would take that into consideration, and thank you.
Mr. Mayor, our next speaker is Jane Gibson.
Council members, Mr. Mayor, I am here. My name is Jane Gibson, and some of you would remember my husband, who was also on the council for a while. I am here to support. Reason I'm here is because of the ditch. Lived along that ditch, Vern and I, for probably 40 years. And it is as bad as I have ever seen it. It has not been probably whacked or mowed in a very long time, probably all summer. And I remember many years ago, they used to dredge that ditch out with some kind of a backhoe where they would remove all of those weeds. And for several years, it would be clean. So you wouldn't have to be taking care of it so much. Obviously, the thing that would help the most is if you would cover that ditch over, which is never going to happen because we are probably talking millions of dollars. but you do have to do something, I think, for the sake of Fremont, to keep that ditch up a little bit better. And the culverts are collapsing, which is the other thing that I'm concerned about, because the water cannot drain out of there any longer. The one on 12th Street, 12th and Claremore, is completely gone. There's nothing left there. So heavy rain would definitely not be able to go down. And that's the culverts and the drainage of the ditch are probably why the streets are flooding so badly in Fremont. It just can't go out anywhere. So I just wanted to let you know, and I thank you for listening. I no longer live on Claremore and Frederickson Street. I am out in Gallery 23, so I really don't even have a right to speak to you here, but I am still passionate about the home that I lived in, and I wanted to let you know that. Thank you.
The next speaker is Jeff Sherman.
I'm Jeff Sherman, Mr. Mayor. I'm here to talk to you today about exhibition drag racing going on 16th and Lincoln, going north and south and east and west on the high school. So me and my wife, we moved here 4 years ago. We knew there was going to be some challenges living over by the high school, traffic and whatnot. But what I was not expecting is the amount of just no care to the public, blowing the stop sign, doing burnouts at the corner, taking off the stop sign and going as fast as they possibly can, going down Lincoln Street, going south towards Military, groups of motorcycles just revving their motors as loud as they can and taking off down the street, all directions, going super fast. Got a lot of families that are moved in on Lincoln Street since I lived there. It's not a question of if it's going to happen. It's going to be a question of when it happens, when there's going to be a kid. Anybody in here that's a parent knows you can tell a kid a million times, don't cross the street, don't chase the ball in the street. Somebody is going to be seriously injured. And so the question we all got to ask ourselves, did we do enough to prevent it? I know you guys' resources are stretched thin. We can't ask cops to patrol that area. We got other parts of Fremont that need to be patrolled, but we got to do something about it. I lay in my bedroom at night wondering if one of these cars, it's just not motorcycles, it's cars too, with their loud modified exhaust, doing a burnout, are they going to come crashing through my bedroom, and take me out in my sleep? It's all hours of the night. It's worse on the weekends. And it's to my surprise, it's not kids. It is grown adults, men my age, that are doing this. It's a problem. The other issue too is the kids on the scooters, the motorized scooters, driving them in the streets. They are not following the traffic laws. They're not stopping at stop signs. I can't tell you how many times I've almost hit one of these kids on these things. They'll just come blowing through the intersection. That's a problem too. I don't want to see anybody get hurt. I want everyone to be safe. We seriously got to do something, at least about the drag racing. Maybe educate the kids on the motorized scooters, let them understand that, they got to observe the traffic laws if they're going to be in the street. But the drag racing's got to stop. And it's gotten worse each year since me and my wife have lived here. So all I ask is try to come up with a solution, maybe some hefty fines, maybe impound their bikes or their cars or something, but somebody's going to get seriously hurt. So if we don't do something about it. Thank you.
The next speaker is Nancy Hank.
For Claremore Ditch. You all are in receipt of an email that I sent just within the last half hour. And thank you, Councilman Van Buren, for your message that this was an open forum tonight. I live in Texas. My mother lives on 12th Street, on East 12th Street. So that particular ditch area there, this last weekend, was flooded. And I've been in and out of Fremont for many, many years as my parents have lived here. And I've always been aware that that ditch has always been quite full, not just of weeds, but also soil under those weeds that are, for most part, blocking half of those culverts, if not all of them. And it was always a concern in my heart that, I'm coming from Texas. There's a lot of flooding that we've had down there, and I get concerned about taking matters before the bad stuff happens. And this last weekend was evidence that there is an issue. And someone said earlier about dredging. I really feel that is something very necessary to be done. Unfortunately, this last weekend was minor street flooding, but it's indicative of a very real problem that does need addressing. So I thank you for your time and your consideration and your service.
The next speaker is Larry Marvin.
Good evening. My name is Larry Marvin, 1945 Morningside Road, apartment 124, Fremont, Nebraska. And I have had 2 storage units broken into and items stolen, and you haven't done anything about it. And I and all the other units throughout the town, we pay our rent. That rent pays 100% of the taxes on each of those units. The ones we use, it pays for the insurance on them, it pays for the maintenance on them, and it pays for the profit for the owner. So we are taxpayers for those. And a lot of times people say renters aren't taxpayers. We are taxpayers through the rent, and that gets paid. Now, this piece of junk was not valuable enough for the criminal to take. Now, if you notice, there is no motor, there's no electric cord and switch, there's no box of blades, and there's no wrench to put the blades in and take them out. So they had all the time in the world to disassemble this and leave the piece of junk. And so I'm supposed to be able to, I'm 87 years old, and I'm supposed to enjoy retirement. And how can I enjoy the retirement playing with this toy? It's not functionable. And so I didn't throw it in the trash because I think that you need to see there's no motor, and nothing else. And if it's not good enough for the thief to take, it's not good enough for me to keep paying rent on the storage unit. And that's my issue there. So I'm very unhappy that the case wasn't solved. The 2 cases weren't solved. And that mathematically is 100%, double times. You failed me 2 times. So that's 200% failure. Our money is going to the police department. So I suggest that when we're talking about budgets now, that I suggest that you subtract $40,000 off of each of the top 3 paid officers in the police department, and have that for a start on the discussion of what they're doing for us citizens. And then I said the 2 failures, it makes it 100% failure. And then I want to say, you call that success? I don't. That's a failure. And our tax money is going to that, and your rules and regulations that you have for that. So I think that I would like for you to have open hearing with you, all of you people there, so you can watch their faces and their body language when I ask them questions. You can see their behavior and their answers. And there's 25% are not here tonight, so you can tell those that I'm not very happy about this. And so that's my issue that I want to share with you is some of us are paying, we're not getting anything for it. So thank you.
Time is 6:45. We still have 15 minutes of open public comment. So for those that have just come in, if you like to speak, you can sign in up front and we'll call on you. Or you can also fill out a comment card and put it in the box right there as well. So we'll have this until 7 o'clock.
Mr. Mayor, would you allow Donna to go ahead and add a comment at this time?
It is supposed to be one time per. I mean, if after, would like to catch me or the council after, I just would like to keep the rules, the one time per. So Okay, the time is 7 o'clock. That concludes open public comment. Would everybody please stand? We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Go ahead and open up the regular city council meeting and call it to order. The time is 7 o'clock. The Opens Meeting Act is posted on the back wall next to the agendas. At this time, we'll have a roll call.
Six members present, two absent, Mayor.
Moving on to mayor's comments. This evening, I would like to honor the service awards for August. We have 5 individuals tonight. First, we have Ann Hoppy, 10 years of service. Ann was hired in 2015 as a library aide. As of 2016, she was promoted to Library Assistant 3, which is her current role. Corey Perry, 15 years of service. Corey started as a wastewater plant operator with the city in 2010. In 2013, he transitioned into the role of wastewater plant mechanic 1 He was then promoted in his current role as wastewater plant mechanic 2 in 2015. Here with us this evening, we have Laura England Biggs, 20 years of service. Laura was hired in 2005 as a librarian 2, and in 2021, Laura was promoted to her current role as library director. Laura, would you please come up and receive your service award for 20 years? Let's give Laura a round of applause. Next, also with 20 years of service, Brian Moeller. Brian started with the city of Fremont in 2005 as a power plant statistical technician. In 2008, he transitioned to be a power plant operator 1. Following this transition, Brian was promoted to power plant operator 2 in 2011, and then power plant operator 3 in 2014. And in 2021, Brian was promoted to power plant shift supervisor. Brian was promoted to his current role as power plant operations manager in 2023. So also Brian is here. Would you please come up, accept 20 years of service to the city of Fremont? Thank you. Thank you very much. And then finally, also here with us this evening, Edward Watts, 30 years service. Ed started with the city in 1995 as a police officer. In 1999, Ed was promoted to police sergeant. In 2010, Ed was promoted to his current role as police lieutenant. Lieutenant Watts, would you please come up and accept your 30 years to the City of Fremont Service Award? Congratulations. Right, very neat. Thank you to all the service award recipients this evening. And that will conclude my comments, and we will move on then to item 1 on the agenda, which is a motion to adopt the current agenda for the August 26th, 2025 meeting. Councilman Jensen.
I'll make the motion to adopt the current agenda.
Councilwoman Ganem.
I'll second.
Cast your votes.
The motion carries 6-0, Mayor.
Moving on to appointments is item 2, a move to confirm the appointment of Casey Schroeder as a firefighter per mayor recommendation. It is my honor tonight to present Casey Schroeder as a new firefighter to the Fremont Fire Department. Casey has completed all the requirements, went through the civil service process, and I'm excited to be able to bring Casey on board as a new firefighter to our department. Is there any questions from the council? If there are not, I'd take a motion to confirm his appointment. Councilman Vaughn.
Motion to approve.
Councilman Horner.
I'll second.
Cast your votes.
The motion carries 6-0, Mayor.
Congratulations, Casey. He's here. Let's give him a warm welcome to the Fremont Fire Department. Right, we'll move on now to item 3, which is my item, a move to consent to the mayor's appointment of Jared Borso to the Board of Adjustment. This board will be meeting here shortly. We need to have a planning commissioner member assigned to this board or on this board. Did talk to Jared. He is willing to do that. This board hasn't met since I've been mayor, so this is a kind of a different situation. So he needs to be on there. So I would take a motion to approve his appointment. Thank him for doing it. Councilman Horner.
I'll make the motion to approve consent to mayor's appointment of Jared Boristal to the Board of Adjustment.
Councilman Peterson,
I second.
cast your votes.
That motion carries 6-0, Mayor.
Moving on to public hearings is item 4, review 2025 City of Fremont 1-year, 6-year street improvement plan. This is a public hearing only. We'll have council action at the next city council meeting on September 9th. We'll now hear from Troy Shaven, our city engineer.
Thank you, Mayor. Troy Shaven, city engineer. City of Fremont's required by state statute to have a 1 and 6 transportation plan, street improvement plan. This is the first, meeting where we're our first meeting where we're having the plan. This plan doesn't allocate funds or authorize any project. It's really just a plan for comment for a long-term guidance as to where the city sees itself going as far as traffic improvements, roadway expansions, things like that. The plan's developed primarily by staff, Public Works Department, Street Department. They're the ones that see the pavement every day. They're out there working. They know what areas need improvement. A lot of their recommendations are based on input from public comments that they hear. A lot of this is complaint driven. You know, enough people start commenting that a certain road is in disrepair. We take notice and it gets put on the plan and hopefully scheduled for a repair. The Planning Commission reviewed this on July 21st and it found it to be in conformance with the master plan, the comprehensive plan, I'm sorry. There were some comments from the Planning Commission. Some minor edits were made. We've had some comments from council members, some additional input from public since that Planning Commission meeting. It's a little different than it was at that meeting, but in whole, probably the same. We try to put forward the plan as best we can as staff. We make recommendations, but at the end of the day, it is up to the city council to determine priorities. We will provide input. I've said this before, so if you heard me say it, I apologize, but I could ask 1,000 people in the city of Fremont what's the most important street in Fremont. I'm gonna get 1,000 people say the street I live on. We can't do 1,000 streets every year. I mean, we have to set a priority and we try to do our best job in prioritizing what we feel the best projects for the city of Fremont are, and that'll provide the most benefit for the most people. One of the things we are going to start doing next year is we are working with a company who has vehicles that have basically cameras on the bottom of them, and they will drive every road in Fremont, every lane in Fremont. And as they're driving, those cameras will record the road. It'll take video of the road and then it will send back to them for analysis, that video, and then working with us, it will help us to develop a priority list based on what we think are the most important criteria for improvements in the city of Fremont. That may be most traveled road. It may be worst condition road. It may be, whatever the criteria is that we decide on. They'll develop a scale from 1 to 5 to determine what the priority is. I'm not saying that priority that they give us will be our priority. I mean, it'll have to be looked at and analyzed like everything else. But I think what it'll do is it'll provide maybe a third independent view of what's going on so that people won't think the east side of Fremont's getting all the benefit, or why is 23rd Street, not being improved here, but it is there. This business is getting priority over me. It's to avoid that kind of stuff. It's just an additional piece of data that will help us to determine what the priorities are and which way we think we need to move forward. So what you have before you is the 1 and 6. This is, like I said, it's a living document. changes all the time. This is the recommendation that staff is making to you. I'll go through a few quick highlights. And then, like I said, this is the first public hearing. This is more to provide an opportunity for council and the public to provide input. The next council meeting will be the one where it's approved and the final decisions will be made on the 1 and 6. So this is an opportunity that I appreciate to hear what other people think and for maybe to gain some insight that we didn't have. I've already had one citizen who didn't have access to this, but came in and asked when, his street was going to be on the budget to be replaced. And honestly, it wasn't on our list. So after he came in, myself and one of the street department employees drove out and drove that street and found out it was probably going to need to be repaired in the next 5 years. And so it was added to this list. That's the kind of input we have. I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on every street in Fremont or know, what the condition of every inch of pavement is. So it's based on input from everybody. But I'll kind of go through the first year and then the carryover kind of from last year, things that we're going to have done before September 30th. The carryover projects, our budget cycle ends September 30th. So really the carryover projects are stuff that are intended to be done in the budget year from October 1, 2024 to October 1, 2025. I guess September 30, 2025. You'll see we've got the traffic signal improvement plans. Those have been on here for 2 or 3 years. They'll be on here for 2 or 3 years more. The Broad Street rehab, the bulk of it is on this year. The thing you'll find about the carryover in the first year plans is as we get closer to the end of the budget cycle, some of the things we have listed on the carryover may actually end up budget-wise in that first year number only because literally on a job like Broad Street where you're talking about, the milling and the actual laying of the asphalt could be delayed 4 days to a week by weather. If that occurs on September 30, it goes in this year. If it occurs on October 1, it goes in next year. That literally could be a swing of $200,000 depending on how much work they get done in those 2 or 3 days. So some of the bigger jobs we've got next year are obviously going to be Broad Street Viaduct. That's part of the relinquishment from the state. 19th Street and Luther Road south of Morningside Road. If you look through years 2 through 6, again, this is a plan. Not everything that's on the 1 and 6 is in the budget. Some of the things that are on here are the priority ones are the ones that we felt we put in the budget. But there's been some turnover in the city engineer position. There's been 3 city engineers basically, and I'd say the last 4 or 5 years, just my input or so about me. To me, I'm not I'm not dogging the guy that lives on 17th and D, but to me, the larger roads tend to be priorities in my mind. D Street from 17th to 18th may be in worse condition than Bell Street from 17th to 18th, but to me, Bell Street from 17th to 18th, even though it may be in not as bad condition, to me is a priority just because of the effects it'll have on overall traffic in Fremont. Not to say that, and I'm just throwing out D Street from 17th. That's just one I just picked in my mind. That's actually a very nice street. I was just there the other day. My point is that, in my opinion, the more important projects are the larger projects. When you ask people what the most important street is in their town, they're going to say the one they live on. If you ask people how is traffic or what's traffic like in your town, they're generally not talking about the road from their house to the collector. They're talking about the road from where they get out of their neighborhood to where they're going. And that's going to be Bell, Broad, Military, 23rd. It's going to be those major roads when you talk about traffic. So to me, those are priority projects, and you'll see a bulk of those listed in here, as well as projects that are based on need or on condition of the road. But that's kind of my personal philosophy. But again, it's a collaborative effort, input from staff, input from council, and input from public. So I guess I'm ready to hear and I really want to hear what other people think. So I can take any questions.
Councilwoman Ganem.
Well, I'll start with an easy question. Looking at the second year through the 6th year, in your opinion, what are the 5 most important projects in years 2 through 6?
So right now we're kind of, I mentioned 23rd Street traffic signals, and those are in the next 2 years. But I think continuation of that, I think in general in the city of Fremont, traffic signals in the city of Fremont, I'll say, I don't want to say they've been neglected because I subscribe to if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And they ain't been broke for a while. It just seems like they're all breaking right now a lot. And those traffic signals, I think, contribute a lot to the efficiency of the speed that people get through town. I know when I'm stuck at a traffic light and there's a lot of cars backed up, I'm not a happy person. I probably become a little more aggressive driver. So I think the quicker you can get people through, the efficiency, those traffic signals are a big part of the future of Fremont. They're not cheap, but I think that the benefits of maybe being a little more proactive than reactive on replacing those things, there's a benefit to that. One of the things you'll see in here, we start next year, but again, it goes from 2 through 6 is we're going to start, there are newer products for, like on Broad Street, asphalt overlays. Generally an asphalt overlay will last, I'll say 10 to 15 years. And then you're looking at, redoing that top 2 inches. There are sealants now, there are products now you can use as an overlay that will extend the life by reducing the deterioration of that asphalt surface course due to weather, chemicals, stuff like that. There's things you can do to that asphalt that are newer that I think haven't been tried yet. One of those products that we've looked at a handful of things, and I think one of them that we're looking at is, so the cost is about $50,000 a mile to put the sealant over, and that's a 3-lane section of asphalt. It's $50,000 a mile. So for example, military, that's about $1 million job from say, or I'm sorry, Broad Street, from Military to 23rd. That's about $1 million job. It's a little over a mile. So say it's $1 million, a mile to do that. That asphalt sealant is 50,000 a mile, and it adds about 5 years to the life of the pavement. And you can do 2 applications before it kind of loses its efficiency and isn't worth doing anymore. So if you figure the lifespan of a asphalt overlay is 10 or 15 years, and you can get an additional 10 years for 2 applications at 50,000 apiece, you're extending the life of that road 10 years for 100,000 rather than overlaying it in 10 years for $1 million. So there's a substantial savings from looking, I think, at some of the advances in sealants and things that extend the life. I think we're kind of dealing with that at the Cabbage parking lot right now. In the past, I don't think we've done a lot of maintenance on that contract, and now we're spending a little bit of money every year to treat that concrete to extend the life, and I think that's a good idea. Condition wise, I think in the next couple of years, 3 years or 4 years, we've got 5th Street from K to H. That's one of the worst streets, I think, in Fremont. 20th Street from Nye to H. I think that's really bad. At some point in the future, we're probably going to have to start looking at just the way traffic moves on the east side of town, kind of out by the school. And as commuters are coming in and going out of Fremont, that military corridor from Luther Road to the highway, and then especially the turn lanes along Luther at Military and at 16th Street. I think as you get more development on the east side of town with the grade school, and as that all fills in, and as maybe you start to move to the other side of the highway, I think the east side of town, traffic wise, you're gonna have a lot more traffic with Military. So you're probably looking at turn lanes, improvements to to military, maybe a widening of military. Luther Road, honestly, would be one of my biggest priorities if I didn't know the costs and the trouble and everything that it would take to get that done with the ditch and the power poles and everything that are along there. That's a monstrous project that'll probably require some kind of funding. But again, I'm a main road corridor kind of guy. I think there's a bigger benefit to getting people out on those main corridors and going. And I think there's not really, except for the highway itself on the east side of town, I think that Luther Road corridor would be a good way to get people north and south from Fremont that are on that side. So those are kind of the bigger projects that I would like to see done in the next 3 to 6 years. But again, I'm here to listen and open, and ultimately it's going to be up to you guys to decide the priority.
Councilman Von Baron.
Yeah, Troy, just a quick, just Cliff Notes version is fine. The differences between an overlay, a rehab, and a reconstruction?
So a rehab and a reconstruction are kind of the same. A rehab is going to be more of a parceling together where maybe the whole road's not done. Generally, it's concrete. So reconstruction and rehab are going to be concrete. A rehab is where you really do panels, individual panels, and maybe don't do a wholesale straight through concrete replacement. A reconstruction is going to be rip out all the concrete, put all the new concrete back. Overlay is going to be where you put the 2 inches of asphalt like we're doing on Broad Street. I myself am a fan of concrete. I think concrete, so a concrete road, when you put it in, it's more expensive, but it'll generally last, 20 to 30 years, where an asphalt overlay will last 10 years. So concrete to me lasts about twice as long, maybe more than twice as long. I don't think the cost is double to put it in. It's certainly more. It's more to put in concrete, but it's good. It's not double what it is to do asphalt. You'll see sometimes we do. I've had people ask, how come on 5th Street from X Street to X Street? It's a neighborhood street. Why did you spend all that money to replace that in concrete when you could have just overlaid it? One of the things about the reconstruction, the rehab stuff, is when you do an overlay, that concrete is the base layer. And if that concrete is in really bad condition, you really can't overlay that. You'll end up taking all the concrete out anyway and having to put down a new sub base that's solid enough to put a 2-inch overlay on. So in here, you'll see we've got a couple newer items, 23rd Street rehab, 23rd Street concrete replacement. That's more of a 23rd Street from Bell as you go east is concrete. 23rd Street as you go west from Bell is an asphalt overlay. And if you drive 23rd and you go east, it's in really good condition in my opinion, but there are some sections. You'll get a panel here, 2 panels here, where that concrete is starting to break out. And if you don't deal with them right away, there's an opportunity over a season or 2 for the water to get into those cracks and maybe merge into the next panel, one way or the other. And then it starts to break that panel up. And the next thing you know, you've got a whole section of road that's bad and has to be replaced or overlaid. So I think we're going to try to be a little more proactive in addressing some of the maintenance issues that we have on our larger roads too, so that rather than having to shut down 23rd for a concrete replacement for 3 blocks and it being shut down for a month or 2 months in the summer, maybe 2 or 3 times every summer we replace 2 or 3 panels and it's closed for 2 or 3 days. And I think that's maybe a better option to try to maintain the road rather than replace it. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that's kind of
No, that's fine.
thoughts.
The other one is feels kind of like the third rail in this. But as the railroad in South Claremont's been a topic for forever. I mean, I know it's going back by at least probably 6 or 7 years. Is there any reason, and I'm just sensitive to it because we understand we've dealt with runoff water and all of those things. Is there any reason that the paving portion of that could not be done as part of this plan?
So
this was approved as part of the 1 and 6, I think, back in 2020.
Yep.
And it's from what I'm seeing, it's not on here at all.
And so the reason it's not on here is because what we've looked at anyway, it doesn't look like the paving part of it helps. It actually, I think the paving part might hurt it for additional runoff. The issue there is I don't think we can get storm sewer out of there. You can't storm sewer the water. It's just, there's a gas line in there. There's a gas line actually on both sides of the street. The closest inlet, the closest storm sewer would be north, and then about 3 houses to the west, and then that goes north. And then after that, the next storm sewer is probably 2 blocks to the northeast. That inlet that's there is 3 feet in the ground, and it's a 15-inch pipe. So it's got about 1 foot of cover over the top of it. I don't think you can't get there because you'd have to go right through the gas main, and that's a main transmission line for us. It's a large gas main. So to get that, I mean, I think the road portion of that is probably in the $1 million-ish just to pave that. And I think you're probably looking at another probably 500,000 for storm sewer if you could even get it there, just because you'd have to move the gas main. So it is in the budget. We kind of changed the plan, or trying to maybe address that issue with detention rather than with storm sewer and trying to get it out. But with detention, the paving was removed from it. So this is the 106 paving plan. So that would not be in here. I guess that's the reason it came out. Now, if you guys, council wants to make that a priority and put it back in, I'll put it back in. I've looked at it. I know the previous engineer looked at it. Previous engineer is a friend of mine, so we've talked outside, and I've kind of picked his brain, and he was unable to find a way to make it work either without detention. So I think the last 2 of us that have looked at it have kind of determined, the pavement through there with the storm sewer is probably not a viable option.
Thank you.
Councilman Horner.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks, Troy. Hey, not so much a question as just a request, on that 19th Street overlay, Summers to Nye. If you could take a look at if there's any way to extend that over to Broad. That section of road Nye to Broad to me is in tougher shape than anything between Summers and Nye, with the exception of that intersection right at 19th and Nye, right there. But if that section could be extended, I think that road is in as much of a need as just about any of them I've seen around Fremont. And then the other question or the other comment would be, if you could elaborate at some time on kind of how does that 19th Street road share look like in that one section, basically from about Summers over to and beyond Broad, all of that street parking and everything through there. I'm just trying to get my head visually, trying to get a visualization of what that's going to look like when we have bike lanes in both directions, how that's going to look. That just feels like a narrow roadway to me.
So that was part of a funding, that was part of a grant that we got. It was maybe 5 years ago to do the design and the kind of the layout. It's called to share the road. It basically goes from 19th and Luther to 19th and Summers all the way across town. Portion that was constructed already is at Luther, and it kind of goes across the road, and then it kind of goes up the east side of Luther and then catches that bike trail that goes behind the new elementary school. And then they also constructed a section on Summers on the west side of Summers, kind of comes out by 19th, meanders down in front of, I think, Ronan Pool, and then maybe goes down to 13th and over to Airport Road, and then I think ultimately you can get on there and basically bike down to Hormel Park from what I know. The section through the middle is a share the road, and it's actually the proposal that was included in that was the 6 or 8 feet on the north side of 19th would basically be a bike path. So it would be a white line, 8 feet off of the curb on the north side of 19th, and then anybody who's seen them, there's the bikes every block or something. There's a bike in the lane so that you can't drive in that lane, and that's a dedicated bike lane. The crossings are what they are, where you're going to cross 19th and Broad. It's a bad crossing. I mean, there's no plan in there to change or allow for signalization across Bell or Broad or even Nye or anything like that. It's ride your bike across town, stop at every street and go across. But it is a dedicated path across town, you know, for a biker. I will give you my comments on what we heard when that was proposed and kind of what we've heard when similar things were proposed is the people that live on 19th Street on the north side will no longer have on-street parking in front of their houses. They won't be able to park there. When we in the past have proposed kind of a linear bike trail, a meandering trail, if you will, the adjacent residents have not been supportive of that. It's probably been about 8 years now, but we replaced the water main here on Military from basically Broad out to Claremore. And at the time we did that to avoid disruption along Military and to avoid kind of restricting traffic, we just abandoned the main under the street and we decided to rebuild it under the sidewalk. And so we basically built the main under the sidewalk from Broad all the way down to Claremore, ripped out all the sidewalk, put a new sidewalk back with a main under it. And that's where it is. And it's a pretty slick place right now. I mean, we prefer it behind the curb, but that wasn't an option at the time. Before we put the sidewalk back, and as that was being planned, we kind of met with the Parks Department. They inquired, is there an opportunity, you know, biking is becoming a legitimate thing. People are looking for alternate ways of travel, walking, biking. Is there an opportunity to maybe make that a bike trail, you know, semi-meandering, I'll say, bike trail that people could enjoy? And I mean, we looked at it. I know there was input from a handful of people along Military that live on the north side who were adamantly against it. I don't want my front yard to become a bike trail. I want 50 people biking by me while I'm mowing my lawn on Sunday morning. You know, that's not what I bought. I bought a sidewalk. I think that share the road on 19th, you're going to hear similar input from people that live on 19th Street. I think a share the road is a great idea. I mean, I think, so we're going through the Safe Streets for All program right now. It's basically an analysis of the city of Fremont and the roads and alternate forms of travel. And we've had a couple events. We had one at John C. Fremont Days. We had one at the Hispanic Festival down here. One of the top two things we're hearing in Fremont right now is people want alternate ways to get across town rather than driving. They want bike trails. They want walking trails. They want to feel safe on paths rather than walking on a 4-foot sidewalk. And so I think there's a need for that. It's just like what you're going to run into is I think you're going to have to find a way to plan for those things coming across and create corridors of trails. May have missed that train already, you know, just based on Military and 16th and 19th. But I know if you go into West Omaha, if you go down 144th or 180th, those right of ways are, you know, 150 feet wide because they've got bike trails that basically run from the north end of Omaha as far south as you can go, and you can ride your bike anywhere you want. That's great for, you know, an opportunity when you're expanding on the outside of town, but to run something like that through the center of town, I think the input you're going to get, while it seems like a great idea, I think the input you're going to get from the people that it's adjacent to is not going to be positive.
Well, it sounds like you're giving it a lot of thought. Thanks for the comments. I appreciate it.
Councilman Peterson?
Hi, Troy. I don't want to put you on the spot here. You made reference to traffic signals. And I've noticed over the years, and I don't know if this may not be a signal issue, but the signal at 23rd and Luther Road that's shared by, say, Sid Dillon's and the Hobby Lobby and Steffi's, seems like there's a lot of accidents there. And I don't know if it's just, is it all driver error? Or do you think there could be people are misreading the turn lane or something? But it seems like about it. I mean, you guys probably, well, I should ask police department, but they probably have records on it, but it just seems like every other day I turn around and somebody's getting whacked there at that intersection. So I don't know if it's a signal issue or not. I'm not blaming anybody.
So again, we actually had a Safe Streets for All meeting today. That the basic goal of Safe Streets for All is to reduce accidents and to reduce serious accidents and deaths to zero. And they actually just completed their accident report for 2019 to 2023, and that intersection of 23rd and Luther is actually like the number 5 intersection in Fremont for accidents,
Yeah.
and then like number 2 for serious accidents.
Mhm.
We did improve those traffic signals. We made upgrades to those traffic signals.
Good.
The signalization plan, how the signals operate, how you move people through Fremont, that was adjusted. As simple as it seems, something like taking a horizontal signal and turning it into a vertical signal could make a huge difference.
True.
Because my brother-in-law is colorblind, and when
Mm.
they have the right left ones, he doesn't know if it's green, yellow, red, or red, yellow, green. When it's up and down, bottom one's
Right.
green. Every
Yeah.
time, the bottom one's gonna be green.
Correct.
So
Correct.
when it's up and down, it's a lot easier to see. So there are things you can do with those traffic signals and planning and design and the signalization plan that can improve those. And that's, I think, the primary idea behind the 23rd signal improvement idea. Also, obviously, efficiency and speed through Fremont. But
Sure.
I would expect when that's done, I would certainly hope anyway, that would have a positive effect on accidents and most importantly, serious accidents.
That's a good idea, actually. I think that has merit. I mean, I was actually hit there once myself by a lady that ran a red light and just boom, right on through it and totally caught me off
So
guard.
the data we have is from 19 to 23. It does not take into effect anything that's happened since that signal was improved, probably middle of last summer. But what I can do is I know the police department also
Good.
has data on that. So maybe request from them and just see maybe year over year, what happened from 19 to 20, 20 to 21, et cetera, and then what happened from 24 to 25 after we've done that.
Okay,
Um,
thank
one
you.
of-
Yeah.
We found out from that 5 of the top 20 intersections as far as accidents are on 23rd Street. Basically, every light you run along, it's one of the worst intersections in Fremont. As part of the traffic signals, basically, we're making every signal is going to have a 4-way left turn. Every signal that we're improving, we're trying to get a 4-way left turn, because your worst accidents are generally your head-on side, your T-bone accidents. So, and they're generally somebody misses a left turn. So, I think that's one of the priorities we're looking at, is making all of those signals 4-way lefts.
Councilman Jensen.
I'd just like to touch on the bike lane thing a little bit. I just spent 4 days in Fort Collins, Colorado, about a month ago, and they had bike lanes everywhere. And the one thing I never saw at all was any bikes out. They're just, but I do want to ask you about the railroad quiet zones there. If you could talk on that a little bit. I know that's something that's been, that predates my time on council. It started in late 2018. So I did have a couple of constituents actually call me about that today. Just kind of.
We had at the Utility and Infrastructure Board, actually one of the members on behalf of her daughter asked what can they do to move that up kind of on the priority list of what we are proposing here. Those railroad quiet zones are basically, and forgive me, I don't have I do, but they're M Street, Pierce Street. There's basically 5 of them from Johnson Road to Luther Road to M to Pierce, and I think maybe out by Christensen Road or something out there. There's basically 5 or 6 of them through town, and what they are the railroad is required actually when they pass through a that grade intersection to blow their horn. And if you live in one of the adjacent homes to one of those intersections, obviously when the train comes by at 3 a.m, that's not a very fun wake-up call. So there is an opportunity to create what they call railroad quiet zones, which the criteria is you basically have to create a physical impediment that will not allow somebody to bypass the arms that come down, which is generally a center median lane with some sort of barricade, or I don't want to say cones, but some sort of permanent impediment, so that somebody can't jump the curb and scream through. And then the quiet zones have to be no closer than 1/4 of a mile to another crossing. If you can line up all of your crossings so that they meet that criteria, and that they're no closer to an on-railroad quiet zone criteria meeting intersection, then you can submit a petition to the railroad, submit an application to designate yourself a railroad quiet zone. And then the railroad complies with that. And then when they come through town, they're not required any longer per their standards. They basically agree that you've put in enough impediments to people being able to get out in front of their trains, that they don't have to blow their horns coming through town, and the train will just come through. They're not inexpensive. I think they're in the $200,000 to $250,000 of crossing range. But I know it for the people on the west side of town that live near the tracks, it's absolutely a priority. I'm a major intersection. Did I mention I'm a major road and thoroughfare kind of guy? So, I'm gonna be completely honest. It's not a priority in my mind for me. You tell me it's a priority and it'll become a priority. To me, somebody not getting hit on Military and Clarkson is more important than somebody waking up at 3 a.m. because a train came through and woke them up. You can call me all the bad names in the world you want, but that's my personal philosophy. And if you don't like it,
Well,
tell me to change it and I'll change it.
Well, I understand that, but it's not like it's occasional. These are very busy tracks. You got freight going through there all the time, often less than half an hour apart.
Absolutely.
Councilman Vaughn?
Hey, Troy, just curious your thoughts on the long-term prospects for Morningside Road and maybe the intersection with Luther in particular.
Morningside and Luther. So Luther Road, we have right now, plans that are being bid to improve Luther Road South. It will not get to Old Highway 8, so Luther Road South, I think someday will become a major thoroughfare south. I don't know where it'll go. I think eventually you're gonna have to have some other connection to the highway on the south side of town, because I don't think Old Highway 8 goes to the 275 now. Right now, I think it just functions as a two-way stop. When they did the developments south of there, they looked at the traffic studies. A signal wasn't warranted at the time. I think as the Port Authority develops and as you get more traffic going down Morningside, I think you're probably looking at widening of Morningside at some point in the future. I don't think it's probably the next. It all depends on how fast the Port Authority fills in. If that Port Authority fills in 3 years, you're gonna have to start looking at Morningside in 3 years. Morningside is another one that's probably not going to be an easy widening job. There are ditches on both sides. It's flat. You don't get drainage issues where it comes out on the road, but you get drainage issues where those ditches fill up and the water doesn't really go anywhere for a while. So it's not an easy job, but I think that Morningside corridor someday probably becomes the main thoroughfare on the south side of Fremont for people moving east-west. And you're probably looking at a 2-lane section both ways as soon as the Port Authority, or, you get enough development on the south side of Morningside that starts to fill in with residential homes. I know there's another phase of that Morningside point on the south side. Basically it all comes down to traffic volume. It all comes down to numbers. And as soon as you get enough people, enough traffic in that area, it'll justify at least a widening and probably signalization there.
Thank you, council, for those comments and questions. Troy, thank you. I'll now open the public hearing on this item, the 1 and 6 year street improvement plan.
Those are minutes from previous meetings, previous budget documents, all part of official government documentation. Nothing that I generated personally, except that top page, I guess, which is the history.
I guess I take a motion to receive
Councilman Von Baron,
I'd move to receive them.
Councilman Horner,
I'll second.
cast your votes.
That motion carries 6-0, Mayor.
Go ahead.
Brad, you're 2318 East Fifth Street. First off, thank you for receiving the documents tonight. You might want to refer to some of these as I discuss some of the history relative to the Claremont Railroad project tonight. I'd like to start by saying it's really well past time for the city to fulfill its commitments regarding the Claremont Railroad project. This has been going on for some time. And so I'm suggesting to you tonight that you probably need to make Amendment 1, which is highlighted on the top page. I won't go into that necessarily. It's just basically you need to add this to the 1 and 6 year plan. I'm here tonight because many people have been engaged in this for some period of time, well before 2020. They spent a lot of time and energy on this project, and it's been included since 2020 when it was officially approved by City Council at their meeting to add to the 1 and 6 year plan. And it was a unanimous vote at the time. The project was also included in the 22 to 26 budget at a cost of $950,000 originally. And it was also part of the March 28, 2023 1 and 6 year plan, but the cost was increased to 1.6 million. TD2, an outside engineering firm from Omaha, was hired and commissioned to do and perform studies of both street and stormwater applications and engineering work. They did so. And largely this was paid for, not by the city. This was paid for by someone who lives in the area that was in pursuit of getting the streets paved and some water drainage issues resolved. That's also included in your packet as to the results of their work. This is also part of the comprehensive plan that says that streets in commercial areas are supposed to be improved. This is an unimproved street. It's gravel from portions of Railroad Street and around to Claremont, and it's getting fairly significant use at this point. Video surveillance shows that it's getting over 100 vehicles in a 24-hour period. I suggest to you that that's more than the traffic that you were encountering on South Howard when that was paved because there was a complex going in, but probably still isn't utilizing that kind of traffic. You have something in the street plan to do South Luther, and there is nothing to generate that kind of volume of traffic at this time because there's only a couple of duplexes down in that area, but yet that's in the street plan currently. So this impacts, the street impact of this affects many of the businesses in that area, not just the two that have been primary spokesperson here, which is Albee Towing and Hazelbrook family. This is a structural components area, grain elevator, JR Sports Complex, and other businesses in the area, and they are all using this unimproved road, creating a dust hazard for the community because it's not paved. You can argue, I suppose, that this won't cure, and maybe you can't do storm drains the way you would normally do them, and you need a detention cell. That has very little to do with whether or not you should pave this road. And the commitments that were made initially as a part of this project to pave this road. I sat in personally as a council member on many of these meetings, as did Councilman Ganem, and commitments were made by prior administrations with Mayor Getchman, City Administrator Newton, Dave Godekin, engineer, Mr. Zetterman, who's quoted in the material that I provided for you that said, yeah, we have it in the 1 and 6 year plan, but we need to move it out because it might interfere with the viaduct closures, so we can't do it just yet. So the fact that it's not included at all is really a step backward on the city's behalf and kind of a slap in the face to those that have spent considerable hours and personal resources, even monetary resources, to see that this gets fulfilled. I would strongly encourage you to help the businesses and the residents in this area get this accomplished. Like I said, it's been going on from well before 2020. I think they said they've been working on this for over 10 years. I know that it was involved in 2020 and I was involved
in those meetings, as was Councilman Ganem. And a lot of promises were made to these individuals about getting the streets paved. That's one. Looking at storm sewer drainage, that's two. And if you need a detention cell to actually capture and clear all the water that's really accumulated there because structural raised their property, JR Components raised their property and further exacerbated the drainage problems. Well, that's all well and fine, but that doesn't stop you from paving the road. Even if you don't put storm drains in, I feel, not an engineer, the paved roads with a 6-inch curb or whatever are going to channel water. It's going to help channel water out of the front door of Balby's. It's going to help channel water out of Hazelbrook's garage, which gets 3 or 4 inches of water every time there's a fast rain. So I strongly encourage you tonight to make this amendment to the 1 and 6 year plan to add back the paving portion of the project as it was originally intended and shows repeatedly throughout the 1 and 6 year plan and the budgeting processes of several years gone by. Thank you.
I'm Larry Marvin, 1945 Morningside Road, apartment 124, apartment 124, yeah. I have kind of 2 or 3 comments. We were supposed to be getting that north viaduct that's about Broad Street and 30th Street in that vicinity. We have a viaduct that I thought the city is going to receive from the state. But when you go over it and you're in the right side lane, you get right over top of it and it feels like there's a pothole about this big. And you get that little jolt like you're going to fall into a big cavern, but you bounce out of it. And it's been that way for 2 or 3 years. And I thought the city was going to work on it and the state was going to work on it. Maybe the state would do it before they gave it to us. Maybe we'd take it before that. I don't know what you did, but it's still there. It's still there. It's not taken care of. And so that's one thing. And I live on near Morningside. Morningside is my address, but I'm in the apartments. When you come off of the viaduct and you come over about 2 blocks, the structural components have a great big humongous storage lot for their semis with loaded rafters and stuff that's pre-ready to ship out. And they're just there. When they come out onto Morningside and they go kind of across to the shoulder over there, the painted strip there is about this big, about 4 inches, I think. And it's when I got out and looked at it once, it looked like 3 inches plus 4 inches plus 4 inches at least is the tires twist that blacktop out of there. So we got a great big pothole that's probably about this long. And then over here, it's about 15 to 17 inches wide. And I told Carrie about it from the street department, and she had her guys come out and fill that in with dirt. And that worked. So, for 6 months. But now it's back the same thing. When they turn, their tires just twist that dirt out and that blacktop out. So we have a water puddle there. And my concern when I talked to her was if we had like a 1-inch snow and you couldn't see the lines on the road or anything, and you hit that, would it bounce us so we go down into that ditch? And it's a pretty steep little 3 or 4 foot ditch going down steep over there. And so they did take care of that. But now it's the same thing again because the truck's pulling out there and they just twist that dirt and that blacktop out of there. And I was thinking if you're scraping off some of this blacktop on Broad Street, if you take about 2 or 3 bushels of that blacktop and put in that mud puddle, that they might be able to drive on that and pack it down. So it'd be a better deal, and it would be a hillbilly repair job, in my opinion, but it would work. So if you have some of that type of stuff, don't just throw it away, but bring some over there and put it on that. So those are the 2 issues that I have. Thank you.
Any other comments from the public? Okay, I'll close the public hearing on the 1 and 6 year plan. Are there any additional comments from council? Again, this is no action tonight. We will again have this as for the public hearing. We'll have this item again at the next meeting. So is there anything else the council would like to add? I would just like to say, street repair and concrete rehab has been a major priority for the city. I know me and the city council. A couple budget cycles before, we went from 250,000 to 500,000 for concrete rehab. And Troy, you were talking about major corridors. A lot of that concrete rehab work happens in the neighborhoods. It happens in, where we get complaints, panel replacements. That essentially we've doubled the budget for that. Again, we also continuing to focus on pothole patching. We got a pothole machine that's pretty innovative. I give Carrie Hoffert some credit for that, where we literally had an online portal where you could go submit your complaint for pothole, and then we're responding. So I think become very responsive when it comes to the public and communicating with potholes and getting new equipment. So I think the whole goal for us has been to be very responsive, to be very service oriented, work on the corridors. You're seeing Broad Street get done this year. You're seeing 23rd Street being a priority, safety along 23rd Street. I thank you, Troy, for all of your efforts, your knowledge of the city, of our roadways system, your experience. Greatly appreciated. It's been a huge help as we work through these projects. All right, if there's no other comments, we'll go ahead and move on to the consent agenda. All items in the consent agenda are considered to be routine by the city council, will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member, staff, or citizen so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. Are there any items to be removed from the consent agenda by council or staff? Councilwoman Ganem.
Number 8.
Any other items from council? Any other items from staff? Any items from the public to be removed from the consent agenda? Seeing no other items, I would take a motion to approve the consent agenda, items 5 through 7, 9 through 22. Councilwoman Ganem.
Thank you. Yes, I asked number 8 be removed.
Would you make that motion to approve the consent agenda?
Yes, I
Okay.
move it.
Yeah,
I move
okay.
to approve the consent agenda, please.
All right, as stated with item 8
As
removed.
stated.
Councilman Jensen.
And I'll second.
Cast your votes.
Motion carries 6-0, Mayor.
Item 8 is a motion to receive and file the period 9 year-to-date standard financial reports. Jen Knapp, our finance director, is here.
Jennifer Knapp, Finance Director, Honorable Mayor, City Council. I provided the year-to-date through period 9 financial reports. These are our actuals. Last quarter, I tried to write a fancy report for you all with analysis and with all of the budget work. I did not get a chance to do that, but wanted to still provide a quarterly report. So I provided all of the raw data for you, and I'm available for any questions.
Councilwoman Ganem.
Maybe that's why you didn't provide all the narrative with it this time. And I wanted to make sure I understood part of this here, because it's important for our finance planning for next year as well, too, because we're 3/4 of the way through the year. And several departments have exceeded the budget, and that's in your reports here too. And I just wondered, that will impact the end result at the end of the year here too. So at that point, then it appears as though we may be going into the negative on the budget, spending more than what we actually budgeted for this year.
We have not, nor do we expect to spend more on the budget than what we had in
Oh, good.
appropriation. And later on, when we go through the reports that I'm asking you to receive, I will point out where you can see what the budget was, for example, the general fund and what we planned
Okay.
on doing versus where we think we're gonna end up.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you. And I was going to ask about the reserves, because if we have issues, we can go use reserves for a number of things. And I wanted to know, with the city's reserve, what did we have in reserve last October 1st in 2024?
Yeah, so that went through audit. It was from our audited
Right.
financials. And we had approximately 11.3 of uncommitted reserves, which we were required to have 11.1. So we were right there. That did include 7.7 million of committed programs that had been committed in the budget. So the 11.1 plus another 7.7 of committed things, like for the police station would be an example, things that were on that last budget. And so that's where we were at that time. And when we get to a good spot with this budget and agree and get approved from you what the budgeted revenue is for next year, we'll be able to calculate the required reserves that we need to have for 25.
Okay, and you mentioned it before. What is the percent of the reserves that we are required to have?
25%
Okay.
of the next year's budgeted revenue.
And so mine is the 12 million for the police department. It appears as though we'll have that reserve left at the end of this year then?
Right now with this draft,
Mhm.
there's still too much cost
Okay.
in there. And there's still some work to do to make sure that we end up with the right amount of reserves.
Okay, I appreciate that. And regarding sometimes lawyer fees, could you tell me our budgeted amount and what we have spent to date on lawyer fees?
Yeah, if you don't mind, I'm just gonna go grab a piece of paper.
Thank you.
Year to date for FY 25, we have spent $483,682 on legal fees.
Okay. And of that, I know I've tried to keep track every month on who and what are asking for public record requests. What have we spent on public record requests?
We've spent a little under $78,000 on public records requests year to date.
Okay.
That's just the legal fee portion of it. That doesn't count the time staff spends on legal requests, which is significant.
I realize that can always add up quite quickly. So what is the percent of public record requests out of that total budget then that we're having?
It's about 16%, and that's just that's year to date. Last year it was about 13.4%. So we are trending quite a bit higher on what last year was already pretty high.
Okay. Thank you. I certainly appreciate it.
Yep.
Councilman Von Baron.
Yeah, just a couple of general questions, Jen. I was, the pages aren't individually labeled. I'll just pick a for instance, rather than a specific question about page 13 on all other funds, just as an example. So we've got, this year, it appears that we've got one fund that spent 0.14% of its allocation and we've got another fund that has spent 170%. So I know there are wide variations happening. And I know there is no one single answer to this. I was just curious why we're getting such wide variations with 3/4 of the year behind us. Does that, my big question is, what are the implications for next year's budget? As we try to understand next year's numbers, if we've got one fund that's only spent 1.14% and another one that's spent 170%,
So
how do
in-
we make sense of that?
Sure. So in the budget documents, which again is later on that you'll receive, in addition to budgeting for FY 26 and FY 27, we also budgeted an estimate for FY 25. So, you know, where we thought we'd end up the year in FY 25, so that really we are looking line by line, fund by fund, not just what we want to do in 26 and 27, but what we're doing now as well, so that there is a good comparison there to make sure that we're doing a good job on the budget. But, you know, as a whole, you know, things change and move around, and there's delays on some things, and we have to, you know, move things around, but we make sure that we're staying under that appropriation level that we're
Yeah,
allowed.
I think that's the big question. So will we have that estimate? Is that in the packet that we're going to be receiving? Great, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if I might.
Go ahead.
Jody Sanders, City Administrator. Mr. Von Baron, I wanted to point out that and I know you were just using it as a frame of reference, but the percentages that you were looking at appear to be, you know, on the revenue side. The top part of that the other funds page, the top part is revenue. If you look down under the expenditures by department, you'll see that the greatest percentage is 24%. So it's not that we're spending outside of what has been budgeted. It's more that we're receiving more than we anticipated for whatever reason. And like the one that's 170%, we had only budgeted to receive 720, and year to date, we've received $9,600, $9,700.
That would make my next request to start using number 18 font. Thank you.
Thank you, Jody.
Councilman Horner.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the explanations so far, Jennifer. You know, Councilman Von Baron brings up a good point. And I seem to remember some of these discussions, and Jody, you might have to chime in here, but as I recall, we've talked about some of these overages before in certain categories or certain accounts. But isn't it somewhat common practice? I know in my business it has been, where we may find that we are a little over budget in one location and we're under budget somewhere else. And do we not have the flexibility within our budget to move some funds if we need to cover someplace where we may have had something happen and we're suddenly finding ourselves, you know, not where we were guessing at, you know, when we did the budget process? Because I know there's a lot of science goes behind that, but it's also at the end of the day, somewhat of a prediction. I won't call it a guess, it's a prediction. So isn't there some room here, if you will, from one account to the next for you to make those adjustments and move things as you see the real time unfold? And then I'll stop.
Not me, but Jody and Jeff, who run these businesses, essentially.
Yeah,
the
and
city
I
and
just
the
mean,
DU.
I just mean you in a very general.
Yeah.
All encompassing sense.
Yeah. We approve a budget, and then it is the, you know, discretion of leadership and the department heads to run their areas, and anything that we need to spend as far as capital or over a certain amount, we come to you all and have you vote. But you know, it is a very dynamic and complex organization, and things do change and we adapt. If we budget for 3 snows and we get a 4th snow, we're still going to plow the roads. I said.
We will be.
At least Colson.
Yeah.
Is there any comments from the public on this item? Okay, Councilwoman Ganem.
Just want to say thank you very much. And I wasn't very clear in my questioning evidently, because I felt if we ran into that problem at the end, our net is a negative, we have reserves to fall back on. And if we have emergencies, we are able to use our reserves as well. Correct?
That is correct. And when we use reserves, that will make that year look like a negative because we've used reserves. We have revenue coming in, we have expenses, and we're doing things that are above and beyond what that revenue is, which means it's going to be negative. And you all had indicated, hey, we need to use up these reserves, and that's what the city and the DU have been doing.
Councilman Jensen.
If there's no further comment or anything, I was just going to make the motion to receive and file the period 9 year-to-date standard financial reports.
Councilwoman Ganem.
I'll second.
Cast your votes.
A motion carries 6-0, Mayor.
Moving on to new business is item 23, resolution 2025-210, awarding contract to Sawyer Construction Company for 23rd Street turn lane improvements. The amount is $797,639. For Shaven.
For Shaven City Engineer, this is for the 23rd Street turn lane improvements, right turn lanes on 23rd to the south into the new Luther Road and into the new elementary school area, the whole area there, and then left turn lanes from 23rd south into the same areas. We received 4 bids. Emmy Collins was the lowest bid. The specifications had a requirement for a start date in 2025 that was based on the Deers 8 subdivision agreement and the contribution to aid and construction formula. Emmy Collins had a start date of March 1, 2026, which did not meet the 2025 requirement and specification, so that bid was deemed not in compliance with the bid specifications. Sawyer Construction submitted the lowest bid that did comply with the requirement of $797,639. The staff is recommending awarding the bid to Sawyer Construction for $797,639. I can take any questions.
Questions for staff on this item? Any comments from the public on this item?
Here, 2318 East Fifth Street. Very pleased to see that this is on the agenda and that the action's being taken on this currently. I guess what I don't understand and wasn't explained at this juncture, with street widening also on this upcoming agenda for the street plan and the budget, the turn lanes that are being put in south of 23rd Street relative to the school and the like, those were much needed and probably should have been there at the time when the school was originally built. I remember making one comment at the time, and I'll be interested if there's any comment on it currently. The road that comes out of the Deers subdivision currently from the school is on elevated property, and that was brought down to the level of Luther Street. My guess is that's going to have to be torn out in order to put turn lanes, widen Luther there and put turn lanes in, which means that we wasted taxpayer expense because we didn't do that project at the same time that that intersection was being built. That was one of my concerns relative to some of what we see in the street plan for timing. Goes right to the heart of, if you're putting these turn lanes in now, the location of those, obviously, I'm sure Troy is engineering that effectively. No questions really about that as to which side of the street's being widened, but it needs to line up all the way to 16th Street ultimately for that widening. Much needed turn lanes. But my caution to the council on a going forward basis relative to your street plans, we need to do a better job, in my opinion, of making sure that the things are sequentially done so that we don't have redo and additional expense to the taxpayers of Fremont for having to redo something that was just put in less than a year ago. If we'd have done those intersection turn lanes at the time, that intersection would already be at the grade level it needs to be. And if Troy has a comment relative to that doesn't need to be redone, that we can abut to that rapidly declining intersection the way it's built, I'd be interested in knowing the answer.
Any other comments from the public? Any additional comments from council on this item? If there are none, I'd take a motion. Councilman Horner,
I'll make a motion that we approve resolution 2025-210, awarding the contract to Sawyer Construction.
Councilman Vaughn,
I will second. That motion carries 6-0, Mayor.
item 24 is resolution 2025-216, authorizing staff to issue a purchase order to USDI for pre-construction engineering services for the gas system upgrades. Again, in the amount of $459,277.50. We'll have staff report.
Mayor, City Council, Jeff Shanahan, Utility Manager. We had, USDI has done a lot of work for the gas division over the years. About a year ago or so, we asked USDI to develop a system model for us to be able to look at some pressure issues we're seeing on our system and where loads are at and how we move gas around through town. So they developed this model. We found a few items that we repaired already and the crews have taken care of those. But one of the major items was how can we get more volume through town and make our system compatible with our amount of transmission that we currently allocate on the northern pipeline. So when we were looking at the model, we said, okay, what can we do to increase the volume that we can use out of the power plant? How can we increase gas pressures in town to make sure under the highest load days, we make sure we meet all of our requirements? And so one of the recommendations was to replace the line from our TBS 1A, which is our north transmission line, into town, and basically increase that pressure from the current 140 pounds to about 750 pounds to like 20 or 32nd and Jaeger, and then put a regulator station in there and knock it down to 349 pounds, run that over to the gas turbine. And that's what this engineering is for. Well, to do that, USDI gave us a proposal of $248,000 to do the engineering to replace some of the pipe and get the piping installed. But in addition to that, we had to do some civil engineering type works, for instance, boundary surveys, wetland delineation, SWIP plan, and easements acquisition. So we went out for quotes on those with 3 companies. Only JEO and Olson responded to those quotes. So what we're asking for tonight is that we approve USDI engineering for $459,277.50. $248,083 of that is to USDI, and the remaining $211,194 was to the lower bidder of the civil engineering type work. But it'll all be contracted through USDI so that they can work hand in hand as the project goes forward.
Any questions from the council on this item? Councilman Horner.
Thank you, Jeff, for the explanation on that. My question, I guess, goes more to probably more of a technical question, maybe one, Travis, that you could weigh in on, just so I can understand it. And I'm certainly not trying to call into question anything, but we are approving an expenditure now. Is that already covered under an approved budget, the FY 25-26 budgets, or is that a budget that we are getting ready to discuss and approve a portion of this expense? I just want to be clear on what I'm doing here.
I mean, it is going to be included in next year's budget. What we'd like to do is be able to, and we only pay for what we receive. So if we, you know, if for some reason it didn't pass, I guess we would not do it, but
So if for some reason we didn't approve that budget, we would be able to just stop.
we would just say hold off on the work. Even if you didn't approve because the project is estimated to be around $8 million. That's what's in the budget. This is 450,000 of the 8 million. Even if the 8 million didn't get approved for whatever reason, we would still have an engineering package that we could always go back to and do when the budget item was approved. We're definitely hoping that this budget gets approved.
And thanks for that, because that was a follow-on question was to ask, is this still useful information to have? Because we've obviously got a problem we need to
Yes.
fix.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the council? Any comments from the public on this item? Any additional comments from council? Councilman Jensen.
If there's no further comment, I'll make the motion to approve resolution 2025-216.
Councilwoman Ganem,
Second.
cast your votes.
That motion carries 6-0, Mayor.
Item 25 is review first draft of the 2025-2027 City of Fremont Department of Utilities budget. So is Jen here? Okay. We can do this now too. We do need a motion to receive the documents right here. So Councilman Warner.
I will make the motion that we receive the documents as stated.
Councilman Vaughn.
Oh, second.
Cast your votes.
That motion carries 6-0, Mayor.
Hey, Jen, floor is yours.
Council, I have for you the first view of the proposed budget. This is a draft. And I want to just go through very quickly what we have put together for you. We have our public hearing, which got posted today, the notice. It is next Tuesday. And so very soon, we will post online the materials for that public hearing. And they will look very similar to this. We have, first of all, the state form, and that is what we turn into the state. And it has prior year actuals and year before, and then the next 2 years, it is exactly what we turn in every year. I've also provided you the valuation that we've gotten from the county. And I have provided a property tax history. This is where you have your, what the proposed levy is. And we also show on here what was approved and what the levy was in 24 and 25 as comparison. Then we have a number of sheets that show what are going on with our major funds. We have a general fund sheet and also a sources of revenue for the general fund. We have a sales tax fund, a street fund, a Keno fund, airport fund. Then we have a executive summary for the city. This is the FTE, so the number of people. We also have the big sheets are your CIPs, your capital improvement plans for both the city and the DU. We have the printouts from the accounting system for every line, for one for revenue, one for expenses for both the city and the DU. And then, if everyone will receive, we also have a DU executive summary sheet that somehow didn't get into your packet. Okay. Okay. But that will post as well, that shows the FTEs. Thank you. 2 pages, please. Thank you. We're doing a lot of printing late today, so I apologize for the confusion. So, it's very comprehensive. There's a lot of materials, so we wanted you to have it as soon as possible, as soon as we were able to produce it. And so that you've got time to go through it before our first before our public hearing next Tuesday. And I am available for any questions.
And I know the goal today was just to get the budget in everybody's hands.
Yeah.
Let us have a chance to digest it, look at it, and be prepared for the public hearing. Do you maybe want to just mention a few high level, about the valuations from the county, where
Sure.
that came in, and maybe anything else that maybe stuck out as we, prepare for next week?
Yeah, so the valuation came in lower than last year, which was a surprise. We do have growth of 2.06%. That's new buildings, but the overall valuation dropped. Last year, the valuation had gone up quite a bit. So that property tax history, in 25, we had budgeted that the levy would be 0.278. In actuality, because that valuation went up and we did not ask anybody for another dime, it dropped to 24.7. In this budget for 26, we are asking for 0.26, which is still much lower than the original or the actual for 24 of 278, and the original budget for 25, which was the 0.27. So we are asking for less of a levy. It is a little more in property tax revenue, but we are limited by the rules of the state. On this sheet, I have provided to you, if we go with the new rules, which is the inflation of 5.17%, that would require us to go to a postcard meeting. And so I've provided that as well, which is still under the 0.27 that we were a couple of years ago. The high level as a whole, when you look at the overall appropriation, it is quite a bit higher than the last budget. And the main drivers are the utility bonds that we're going to do, and the bonds that we're doing on the city side as well, that are in the CIP for those builds. And then in addition, with the state changes on what we're required to do for pensions for the retirement, and then just inflation of cost, it has, the appropriation request has gone up. And I'll stop there.
Thank you very much. Councilman Horner?
Just a comment, help me understand, or not a comment, but a quick question. So you said valuation is down
Yes.
overall, and we're still doing a levy that seems to me to be pretty low, but yet we're still going to be meeting all the obligations and everything that we need for the budget and all that kind of stuff. And I see a head shake.
No, currently, if you turn your attention to the sheets that Jen presented to you for the sources of revenue for the general fund and then uses. There's the one that starts at the top of sources of revenue, the one that I'm referring to says general fund uses. Michael, do you have that available where you could call that up for us? Go down to the next one. Can you make that any larger? Maybe. So if you look at the last line, you'll see that right now we are looking at deficit spending. Now, we had intended, as you can see from our 2025 budget column, that we had intended to use $7 million in 2025. We had planned to use $7.3 million for building buildings, essentially. The fire station and the police station were both, the very round estimates were included, and we had set aside reserves to build those facilities, as well as, I'm sorry, it's not the fire station, it's the street fleet building and parks. So we had intended to do deficit spending for those capital projects. As you know, those projects did not meet that time schedule, and so we see them, only a portion of that coming out in 2025. We're down to 5.2 million of the spend. But when you look at 26, we have a much larger gap of almost $20 million. And then in 2027, we're running at a deficit of $13 million. This is for general fund only. So the first page that is on this report, the general fund sources of revenue, goes through and captures what are our sources of revenue. Where can we collect perhaps some more dollars? Property tax is the only one that's really at this point left for us to try and collect more revenue. Sales tax, we do have the amount that the citizens had passed years ago for the property tax relief. You can see that basically the amount that we have budgeted to come into the sales tax fund for that purpose is coming right back out and going over to the general fund to provide our citizens property tax relief. We have Keynote property tax relief, which we are planning on pulling for 2025. We had originally planned to use $650,000. The difference that you see there had to do with finishing out the library project for 2024. You see that number raised by quite a lot, but in 2025, we're back down to the 650. We're raising that to $800,000 for both years. So that gives us an additional $150,000 in each year in, again, property tax relief. You can see the impact of the transfers in from the utilities as the utility departments continue to grow. They are generating more revenue, which the revenue amount, with certain exceptions, comes over to the city at 6.25% of the revenue. Lodging and occupation taxes are fairly well tapped out in terms of our capacity to charge more. Franchise taxes, you can see, are frankly waning at this point as more and more people go to streaming services rather than traditional cable. Our charges for services, that's where things like when we ask you about waiving fees for this organization or that organization, any individual request is not going to make or break the city, but the accumulation of that lowers what that charges for services are. Other income, typically, trying to think what some of those do off the top of your head, what gets lumped into other income, Jen? Yes, the interest on our investments. But again, as we see that we are spending our reserves down, we expect our interest to subside as well. Federal and state grants, those are the ones for 26 and 27 are, generally speaking, are hoped for grants, not we've been awarded grants. For those projects, many of them, not all of them, but many of them won't be done without the federal grant or the state grant that we would hope for. And as Jen pointed out in a previous presentation, our aid to cities has declined, and we have been informed for 2026, we will not receive any amounts under our aid to city. The food and beverage tax, we are currently capped at collecting $700,000 in any one given year. The amounts that you see that maybe go beyond that are, generally speaking, penalties and interest that have been imposed. That our current levy for that or rate for that is down to 1%. It would require of going to a vote of the public to increase that percentage that we have, or excuse me, not the percentage, but rather the amount that we'd be allowed to collect. That would require a vote of the citizenry. So as you look at the expenditures that you see, the amounts that you see there, we are working with staff, looking for opportunities to save some money, push out projects, all of the kinds of things that we'll need to do to be fiscally responsible. The conversation about the whether or not to go to the postcard meeting, that's looking at whether we take the growth plus 2% is what would keep us out of the postcard meeting. The other example that Jen left was the postcard meeting. That's because our inflation factor that has been approved by the Department or excuse me, the State Auditor's Office, this year the SLICE index was 5.17. So it's an additional 3% of revenue that could be generated. The way that the next year's property tax request is based on how much you can ask for, is predicated on what you asked for last year. And as we've talked about before, in our efforts to, be good stewards of our finances, we have driven that number down intentionally to about as low as we can get and still carry out our programs. If we choose to stay away from the postcard meeting and stick with the 2% plus our allowable growth, which was, as Jen said, the 2.06, we're giving up about $200,000. Now, $200,000 doesn't look like much in comparison to the budget deficits that we have. But bear in mind that if each successive year is based on what you asked for last year, the decision that you make for this year will impact all future years. So if we say, and again, I'm rounding, but $200,000 isn't enough to have to go to the postcard meeting. Well, that's fine, but you need to understand every year is another $200,000, and it's not going to take very long before we're looking at $1 million that could have been implemented if we stayed with the 2% plus growth for the next, I believe it was 8 years that we had some analysis on. Jen put that together for us. So that's a conversation to have in this room, certainly, in your own hearts, think about that. But that's the rest of the funds are balancing, but staff has a lot of work to do to determine what projects or programs or positions we won't be able to fund this year. And we will be working on that and have kind of our best attempt at that for the public hearing.
Jody, can you just, when you say deficit, part of that is we have a lot of big projects on the horizon coming out of the general fund. When you look at fire and police stations, right? So
100%.
Those are one-time capital outlays that create a deficit based on because we're using reserves.
Right.
So I just wanted to be clear on that. A lot of what's happened, yeah, valuations went down. Well, that's a, thing that we're dealing with. I've asked staff, and they're cutting wherever they can cut right now to try to, and they do a great job when it comes to our department heads working within the budgets. We're, working through all the union negotiations. We're working through, payroll, inflation, and everything to provide the services that we need to provide. But, when we also had reserves saved up to where we need to get these projects completed as well. And so that was kind of the goal, is that we wouldn't necessarily, need to carry a reserve if we have projects that need to get done and need to get going on. And that's one thing that's been our priorities: get the police station done, work on our public safety, work on our streets, start completing these things. Sure, we could kick the can down the road and see our reserves grow. But that's not what we're here to do. We're here to improve the quality of service and keep our city moving forward. So I think that's a lot of what you're looking at is yeah, there's some bigger projects on the horizon. The biggest for the city is the 2 public safety buildings. And so, I think that, yeah, it is a conversation we need to have, but yeah, it's an unusual year where you see valuations go down, right?
100%.
Councilman Von Buren.
Is there any particular reason given for valuations going down?
It's- So one of the major corporations in our community had filed and entered into an agreement with the state under the Nebraska Advantage Act. And their investment in the community and the number of jobs that they created at a particular wage level afforded them the opportunity to waive their personal property tax. So the equipment inside their new building or improved building, all of those investments would be considered tax exempt from a personal property tax standpoint. And I believe under the Advantage Act, it's a 9-year hiatus from that.
What I understand statewide, we're probably dealing with several hundred million on a statewide basis. So that's going to come to a head.
Jen, is there anything else you'd like to add tonight? I think
Nope.
We've obviously got a lot of studying to do before we get to the public hearing, and I just want to thank you and your staff for putting this all together.
Been a lot of time. We add up the numbers, but they're really doing all the work, and so it's really thanks to everybody. So we appreciate you going through it, and we're available for questions.
Yes, I guess I would echo that. One, thanks to the finance department. They've done a stellar job in pulling this all together. But second of all, please do reach out with questions, something that doesn't make sense to you, something you're wondering about, because oftentimes if you have that question, probably someone else on the council also has that question. And it's only going to be a much more productive public hearing next week if you feel like you have maybe not the best grasp, but at least an understanding of what the challenges are and what the questions are.
Okay, we'll have our public hearing on the budget next week, and we'll be ready for that. And then at this point, I would ask it for the executive session. Councilman Jensen.
I move to go into executive session for the purpose of contract and labor negotiations and for the further reason that the executive session is necessary for the protection of the public interest.
Councilman Horner.
I will second.
Motion has been made and seconded to go to executive session for the purpose of contract and labor negotiations for the further reason that the executive session is necessary for the protection of the public interest. Is there any discussion? Pending motion is to go in executive session for the purpose of contract and labor negotiations for the further reason that the executive session is necessary for the protection of the public interest. Cast your votes.
That motion carries 6-0, Mayor.
Motion to go in executive session for the purpose of contract and labor negotiations for the further reason that the executive session is necessary for the protection of the public interest has been approved. Discussion will be limited to contract and labor negotiations. No official actions or votes will be taken during the executive session. We'll now move back to the back conference room.
I'll make the motion to come out of executive session.
Councilman Vaughn.
I'll second.
The motion carries 6-0, Mayor.
9:34. Take a motion to adjourn. Councilman Horner,
So moved.
Councilman Peterson.
Second.
Motion carries 6-0, Mayor.
We are adjourned.